You are listening to Future Voices, a podcast brought to you by Beha Futures Foundation.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Futures Voices. My name is Eddie Trustovic, and I'm here with you again today. But today I also have the pleasure of introducing you to a new co-host. His name is Mohamed Gania. Mohamed has been someone who's followed this podcast quite closely and shown a keen interest to take leadership in the podcast. So, Mohamed, welcome to Futures Voices as well.
Yeah, it's my honor. Thank you, Eddie.
Mohamed, I think I'm going to give you the honor of introducing our guest and starting him off with some questions.
First of all, welcome. Today our guest is Fedja Begovic. He is the director of USAID Turizam. I would first like for him to introduce his background and what initially drew him to that industry.
Thanks, Mohamed. Well, it hasn't been a planned journey, I would say, altogether, because no one dreams of becoming a director of USAID Tourism project when they are 18 or something. And it was the case for me as well. I'm born and raised in Magla. I studied there through high school and then moved to Sarajevo back in 1995 for the studies in economics. And things sort of started developing there. I applied for a scholarship in 1997 for a US-funded study program for a year in the United States. And that went really well. And when I came back, I started looking for a job, and the first job that I got was a job of an interpreter for USAID Business Consulting at the time. This was in 1998. And then through a series of roles and then different changes, different projects, basically it turns out that most of my experience was related to economic development, and mainly with USAID, but also with some other donor-funded projects. And 20-something years later, here I am in this position.
And Fedja, I think it's very important to highlight here that recently we organized Futures Leaders Summit in Sarajevo, which was a huge success. We had over 500 young people from the entire country, including members of what we call the global community, or some people refer to it as the diaspora. And one of the interesting panels that we had during this conference was focused on how tourism can be a game changer in Bosnia Herzegovina, how it can change not only the economic state that we're in, but also change how people connect within the country, how people perceive Bosnia Herzegovina outside of the country, and also internally. Let's face it, not everyone is familiar with every element and every angle of Bosnia Herzegovina and the beauties that it has to offer. And we want to thank USAID for supporting that panel and really very interesting discussion. So on that note, I'd like to jump to our first question regarding what you've been involved in and what you have done in terms of the USAID. But I think it's very important for people to understand what USAID's Developing Sustainable Tourism project in Bosnia is all about. So can you give us just an overview of what the project is?
Of course, and I'm very happy that I had a chance to attend the conference that you mentioned, and it was really exciting with all the young people and all the topics being discussed. And this project is generating a lot of the sort of background activities for conferences like this, with a lot of sort of interesting themes and topics. And it's a 5-year tourism development project funded by US government through USAID. It's basically trying to help position Bosnia and Herzegovina as a competitive destination on the global market. And it's focusing on sustainable tourism development. So just some basic things, like we have 4 main components. One is focusing on the destination branding and promotion. The other one is dealing with developing tourism products. We're also trying to reform policies and regulations. And we are also having a huge emphasis on developing human capital, because without tourism workers, none of this would really connect together. In addition, to make things happen, we are also trying to push the access to finance support. So all these things should eventually contribute to economic growth. But also, as you said, there are other aspects, not just economic growth. There's also social harmony, and especially people connecting throughout the country through tourism businesses. And then we have a better chance of representing the destination globally.
Okay, Fedja, adding up to that, what Eddie said, I would like to ask you a question regarding how did the USAID projects help engage youth in Bosnia and Herzegovina and focus on youth?
Well, there are so many aspects of our work that engage youth. I mentioned the human capital development. And this is where we had some specific activities with high schools, because through the formal education, this is usually the first chance for younger people to get involved with tourism. But there was one thing we noticed, which was that the curriculums or the study programs through high schools don't really prepare young students for what the job market is asking from them. And then the employers tend to spend a lot of time training these people who just came out of school and they were supposed to have some skills. Not to say that everything they learned in school was not right, it's just that the curriculum needed some updates. So we worked with the two Sarajevo tourism high schools and with the Ministry of Education of Sarajevo Canton to help them engage the private sector and to make sure that the private sector is basically influencing the curriculum in schools so that whatever the kids end up learning is going to prepare them well for what the employer is going to require from them. And that was just one example of what we did with formal education. We also worked with university level education, and we helped two universities in the country obtain the prestigious UN TED-Qual certificate. This is Tourism Education Quality certification. And it's an important aspect of the journey, because this country doesn't just need waiters and housekeepers and chefs, and we do need them, but we also need managers. We need competent hotel managers, tourism board managers, and other university educated people who are basically through this certification obtaining a chance to study following the global best practices, and then to use that knowledge for the benefit of developing the tourism in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So these are, I would say, the two main examples related to formal education. We also had a huge sort of emphasis on developing an innovative online education platform. And this is in our case called the Turizam Academy, where we have 24-hour access for young people and for anyone really interested to get some new knowledge for a large number of high-quality courses, interactive courses that can help with some basically shorter bites of knowledge that are specific to some topics, but can really be helpful to a young person in developing their capacities.
Fedja, often people, understand tourism from a diaspora perspective because, well, I guess we form part of that tourist rush. And we often have comments about certain qualities in delivering services and so on. And I think a lot of that feedback comes back into organizations like yours. And I'm sure you guys are doing a lot of incredible stuff that is helping improve. And you mentioned a few examples right there in terms of the education perspective. Can you talk us through some projects that you've been involved in, or maybe some specifics of the projects? What has been achieved in your, I guess, mandate?
Well, it's been already 3 years that the project is operating, and there are some significant results to date, and we are very happy with these results. But, in the interest of time, I can just skim through some of the most important ones. And just to reflect back on when we started, basically, we launched the project in 2020, and COVID was still huge. And that the industry that suffered the most from the COVID pandemic was tourism, obviously. So we wanted to make sure that this destination has confidence of international travelers, and we supported the government structures to introduce the Safe Travel Stamp, which was issued at the time by the World Travel and Tourism Council. And this was an important step to protect the workers in the tourism sector, but also to send a signal to international travelers that Bosnia and Herzegovina is a safe place to travel to. This had to be the first step, just basically to come back on the map of international travelers. I mentioned working with the government, and one of the key things that we worked with the policy, with the public partners, is on developing of tourism development strategies. And, we are really proud of tourism development in our country. Before 2019, this was the third largest growing tourism market or third country in terms of tourism development. But a lot of that development was really happening to us. We were not driving that change. So We work with the entity ministries who are responsible for tourism to make sure that the tourism development strategies are adopted. And this will ensure the planned sustainable and dynamic growth of the tourism industry in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Then in parallel with the private sector, we worked on strengthening the destination brand of the country, and we did so in a variety of ways. We helped the industry participate in major international trade fairs. We also introduced what is called roadshows or destination presentation activities, where we basically went to targeted markets and we presented the country, and we brought the industry leaders to do business-to-business meetings with tour operators from all over the world. And we've done this in so many countries already, and this is all yielding positive results. So now 2023, by all statistics, is basically breaking the records that we had in 2019, which was globally the best year, and also for Bosnia and Herzegovina, the best year for tourism. And I would like to just pause on this fact because not all the countries in the world have managed this. The global average is around 85% of the numbers from 2019. And I'm happy that Bosnia is one of the countries, Bosnia and Herzegovina is one of the countries where we've exceeded those numbers from 2019. Other things, some of them I already mentioned, the Tourism Academy that we've introduced and the TEDQual certification. This is really trying to help the workforce development, but we also provided direct financial assistance through over 20 grants to different tourism businesses around the country. Many of them are managed by some really great and young people who are ambitious and who just needed that injection of capital to develop their businesses and to grow as businesses, basically faster than they would normally on their own. We've done so many workshops, I can't even remember. But I think on a larger scale, I would mention a couple of initiatives. As a country, we have a lot to offer. We have a rich cultural heritage. We have some natural beauties. One thing that we are commonly neglecting, I would say, throughout the country is the development of rural tourism. Sure, Sarajevo, Mostar, Neum, Jajce, so many beautiful towns, Banja Luka, Trebinje, that people from outside are already familiar with. But there are some great places that we wanted to recognize that are near these cities, but they are really more rural and they are, as they say, off the beaten path or something like that. So we introduced an initiative based on a French model, which is called the Most Beautiful Villages of Bosnia and Herzegovina. And so far, we've been able to recognize 17 villages that fit the criteria. And basically, this gives you a chance to see, if you're an international traveler, to see Blagaj, to see Lukomir, to see Vranduk, to see Krupa na Vrbasu, some places that are really not so far from the key destinations and key tourism locations and attractions, but they are unique and they have something else to offer. And I think if you are thinking of positioning Bosnia and Herzegovina as a tourism destination, we really need to showcase such destinations, because this is where you meet the nicest people in the world, and this is where you taste the greatest food in the world, and we wanted to bring that to international travelers. Another similar initiative is called the hub and spokes model. It's basically starting from a hub, such as Sarajevo, for example, but it gives you like 20 or 30 or sometimes 40 ideas of what you can do within a short traveling distance. So if you sit in your car and if you drive for, let's say, 1 hour or so, you can reach at least 20, 30 destinations that still have some wonderful things to offer. And this is what we wanted to do. So we did the hub and spokes model already for Sarajevo, Mostar, and Banja Luka. And you can find these online in case you don't have ideas over the weekend, what to do, or you're just coming to the country for the first time and you don't know much about the country. These basically guides can help you find some exciting things around Sarajevo, Tuzla, and Mostar. Sarajevo, Banja Luka, and Mostar. We are just starting to work on Tuzla, and we plan to finish it before the next season. And we really believe in this model because it helps us achieve some of the key objectives for tourism development. And this is for people who did come to our country, basically to stay longer and to spend more money on the destination. Another example of a tourism product is called the Herzegovina wine route. This is something that was developed some, can't you remember, 15 years ago or so, and started by the tourism board of Herzegovina-Neretva canton. But over the years, it kind of slowed down, and we wanted to revitalize this tourism product because it focuses on the best or some of the best things that this country has to offer. Herzegovina as a region, gastro segment of the offer, and then also a rich cultural heritage that is part of the wine route. So Herzegovina wine route has been recognized as a cultural route of the Council of Europe. Mostar was declared as a city of wine 2024, and we are planning to do a lot of promotional activities around these examples to make sure that people want to visit this country, and when they do, that they want to stay a bit longer and that they know basically how to spend money, or that they have so much offer that they can really spend more money at the destination. Sorry if this took a bit longer, but I could talk for hours. I guess after 3 years of project implementation, there are just so many examples of what we've done throughout the country to support tourism development.
Yeah, Fedja, that was wonderful, amazing. I would just like to ask you two simple questions in regarding what did you say. First one is, what was the biggest challenges you faced in the last 3 years? And the second one is, basically, the greatest gems are hidden. So that basically is true for Bosnia and Herzegovina. What were the villages or the towns or the places that was most hidden that even some of the Bosnian folk didn't know about?
I'm just thinking on the challenges. And, the usual sort of branding perception of the country, wherever you talk internationally with someone, the first association that they have about Bosnia and Herzegovina is not typically what we would want them to think of. Many of them remember the war that we had. And this is especially the case for some older generations. The younger generations, unfortunately, don't have any associations, and they really don't know what to think, or they don't have a brand of the destination developed in their mind. And for me, I would say this is one of the greatest challenges that we still need to tackle through a number of activities. Another challenge, I would say, is more on the inside, and this is about people here not understanding how beneficial tourism can be for the development of the country. Also, people here not believing that some of the things that we have and that we take for granted, that we see on a daily basis, can be an excellent tourism product, can sell extremely well. And just to reflect on a specific example, I remember being in one village and talking to a young person and saying, there are so many activities you can do here to offer experiences to some international tourists. And he says, like, for example, what? And then I said, just, some woodwork, chopping the woods or collecting the hay or milking the cow. And he started laughing, saying, are you crazy? Who would pay to do this? And it's just the perception that we have that everything around us is ordinary is something that is slowing down the development of a modern tourism experience or a modern tourism product. So I would say it wasn't a huge challenge. It takes a bit of sort of examples to be shown and, case studies to be analyzed and some study trips to be made, but it did slow us down a bit in terms of just bringing that change. And to the second part of your question about the villages, I was trying to count from the 17 villages that we declared as the most beautiful villages of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and you can find the list either on turizambih.ba website or MBV, like Most Beautiful Villages, mbv.ba website. From the 17 villages, I visited 12 or 13, I can't remember because we added some. So there are still, I think, 5 that I need to visit. And I'm really, I would say, I travel a lot and I tend to visit, and I've worked in agriculture a lot. So I would say there are so many wonderful places to be explored by the locals as well. And then, of course, someone who comes to the country for the first time, he or she is not going to visit all 17 villages, but the offer is excellent. So if you visit one village this year that you haven't visited before, we're going to get there, one at a time. I mentioned that we copied this model from France. France started this some 40 something years ago. Now they have, if I remember well, around 160 villages recognized under the label. We have 17 in Bosnia. I think we can double that because there are so many great places around the country. But I would rather prefer on the individual changes that any of us can make, which is, let's take the next weekend to visit one of these villages. And then let's make sure that we recommend that village to an international traveler that comes to our country that we are in touch with. So I'm happy with small steps, but just to sort of keep in mind that this country has so much to offer.
Fedja, I couldn't agree more with you. I think we all need to play a more active role in promoting some of these beautiful places and villages. I myself, obviously, I've lived in Australia for 30 years now. I've spent so much time traveling back to Bosnia, and I'm pretty much a returnee. I've spent the last maybe 6 months of the year, the last 8 years in Bosnia, and often promoting tourist destinations. I myself was shocked at how little I knew about certain parts of Bosnia, and despite the fact that I've traveled a lot. So I made it my mission to go and visit some of these smaller places, to take some of those roads that I wouldn't normally take that could potentially lead to some new and undiscoverable small village that has a lot to offer, but yet to be discovered. So I'm glad that you're putting a big focus on this. My question to you is related to how do we get more young people, but also people who are generally interested in tourism, to make the effort within Bosnia to reach out and go out to those places that you have been promoting, but also to some of those places that are not yet on this list of 17. Because as you said, we are the best agents of promotion. We are the ambassadors of tourism in Bosnia. You guys are doing an amazing job in doing that in the framework that you're operating with. How do you motivate more people to do what we need to be done?
It's become so easy nowadays because everyone is on social media and everyone is posting something. And I know recently we had some smog in Sarajevo and everyone was jumping to put some smog photos online and just to complain about the air quality. I'm not happy with the air quality and we can do better and we should do better. But I didn't post any of these photos because I want to post positive things. And I just hope that each of us can find some great photos in their phones. I'm sure we all travel, throughout the country, sometimes through family connections, sometimes through friends, sometimes just for the sake of traveling and seeing some great places. But what I try to tell everyone in my network is basically just keep in mind that that one single photo that you post can be a reason for someone to put the same destination on their wish list. And it all starts there because if we each motivate 1 or 2 or 3 people to visit a place where we've been, and this is where I draw my inspiration. In most cases, I see something that someone else has visited and I'm thinking, this looks amazing. I want to go there. I want to see this. This is valid just, not just for international, but also for local examples. And I think it can start with this. It can also start by, sharing something with your immediate network, even if not online. And I read about this concept, the power of weak connections, which talks about, how your network of people that you don't really know that much, you don't hang out with them daily, like your hairdresser or your, friend from school that you see from time to time, or people that you have some coffee with. Basically, through this small network that we often tend to ignore, you can have so much impact and so much influence. Because when I think of my last vacation, it was my hairdresser who basically mentioned a wonderful place that he visited. And I said to myself, okay, I'm looking for some ideas. This sounds great. I want to do this. So every photo or every conversation can turn you or me or anyone else into, as you mentioned, into an ambassador of this country. And I think by making this small effort to promote the country, we can achieve so much. We have a huge diaspora, a huge number of people who are living or working or traveling through the world, with international connections, with family throughout the world. So all of us have the opportunity to promote this country if this is what we want to do. And I'm urging everyone to think in that direction, because we can achieve so much for the benefit of the country and for the benefit of the people who are receiving tourists and basically charging them for something.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I have a question regarding, is social media a big factor in contributing to tourists coming to Bosnia and Herzegovina, especially from Asia? Like we have seen a lot of Asian people in Sarajevo, Mostar. How is that happening?
Well, it's a combination, I would say, not just social media, but also other activities that are being conducted and implemented by the private sector and by tourism boards. And we do have some excellent tourism ambassadors formally, like the tourism boards of different regions and cities and cantons. We do have an active sort of number of companies, at least 10 or 15 very strong companies who are visiting as we speak. There's an international fair in Jeddah that I saw some posts last night from. The Visit Sarajevo is organizing a group of tourism boards and also private sector businesses to showcase our destination at this international trade fair and establish business-to-business connections. And then I would say once these business-to-business connections are established, and once the connectivity is in place, because we need to make sure we have people who are interested in the destination need to be able to fly here without, so many stops and so much delay in traveling. Once this is done, I think this is when the social media kicks in to basically make or break, to help someone who doesn't know much about the destination to put it on their wish list. And this is why I was talking about showing your best photos and showing your best experience, sharing your best experiences, because this can, through some friend of a friend, can, come in front of some random guy or girl in Asia who will say, I want to go there. Why not? It looks amazing.
Fedja, I'm also interested in talking about how do we improve the quality of services when it comes to tourism. We talked about education as a key component. We talked about also best practices from around the world. I think one of the biggest, frustrations that we always have is, for those of us that have traveled around the world, we're very critical not only of tourism in Bosnia, but tourism in any country for that matter. We're always looking for best practices and so on. How do we scale those quality of services across the entire country? How do we ensure that when you visit a cafe in some small town, that you're getting a high quality level of service that you would expect even in other places? And I'll use this as an example because I've seen how tourism in Australia has evolved over the last 30 years, where primarily quality services were offered in the large cities such as Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, Adelaide, and Perth. But now you can travel to pretty much any small town in Australia, regardless of how far it is from one of these epicenters of tourism. And you will find just as good of a service when it comes to quality of coffee that you drink, quality of pastries that you eat, and then again, those small little things that people pay attention to. You mentioned before all of these villages in Bosnia that are doing an incredible thing to actually showcase what they can offer. But how do we scale all of this across the entire country and make people understand that this agro and rural tourism can be a game changer for some of these small communities that are being depleted of population as well?
Well, it's a combination of efforts, I would say, and there are some things that I already mentioned. I think, in terms of workshops, the numbers that I need to have because of the reporting purposes suggest that we've done as a project in the last 3 years over 500 workshops that were attended by more than 10,000 people. And this is usually the best way to do some capacity building and to transfer knowledge is through direct training activities around the country and in the field. And we've done so much, and not just us, there are other organizations doing this. and it's a never-ending process. And there's one challenge that everyone is facing globally, not just in this country. The trends that we are seeing is that tourism workers are migrating to better paying countries. So people from Bosnia are going to other countries like Croatia or Slovenia or Germany, but also people from Croatia are going to some other countries like Spain or France or UK. And we need to deal with these changes. We also need to deal with the fact that people are sometimes changing the industries. Even if they stay with us in the same country, in the same city, they switch from tourism to something else. And that's okay. We just need to make sure that the new people who are taking their place have an adequate training so that they can offer world quality services to someone who comes and visits the country. As a country, I must say, based on the surveys that we've done, that are done throughout the country, and done by even some relevant international platforms like TripAdvisors, we do well, meaning that tourists are generally happy with the quality of services. Here, they're happy with the level of knowledge of foreign languages, mostly English and sometimes German and some other languages as well. But we need to work on this, and we need to make sure that there are in-house training activities offered by different restaurants and hotels that can quickly build the capacity of a new employee who just joins the system and needs to start from scratch. And we are also providing this in partnership with the entity level chambers of commerce through something that we call a Pathways to Professionalism, or in Bosnian language, Profi program, which is developing through on-the-job training, developing skills in different segments of tourism and hospitality businesses. I mentioned the formal education development activities such as high school and university level. I mentioned the online training platform that we have. And then in addition to this, we also supported some adult training centers or learning centers through some grant mechanisms to basically introduce new trainings around the country, be it English language or hospitality skills or something else that is needed. Going back to Tourism Academy, I think there's so much content now that is offered for free to anyone who is interested to learn, that is available 24/7. So I would also urge all young people who are in tourism already or are considering the career in tourism to just go through Tourism Academy, see what is there that they can do in terms of courses. And I could list like so many great examples, but I think easiest if someone just takes a quick search and sees what's available online.
In what way does the USAID promote sustainability for young professionals to stay in the tourism sector?
Thanks, Mohammed. Well, as I mentioned, sustainability is already embedded in the name of our project. We want to develop sustainable tourism, and it goes in so many directions. We tend to focus a lot on the sustainability of tourism product. So let's not, harm the environment when we are bringing tourists, and let's make sure that we use the best in energy conservation practices and other mechanisms that are available to us. But a part of that is also making sure that the engagement of youth comes through some sustainable mechanisms. And as I said, we wanted to make a lasting change through the change in formal curriculum in high schools. So we worked with 2 Sarajevo high schools to pilot the program, but then we invited basically all other cantons in the federation to learn from this and to see how they can use the same model to introduce the changes that they need around the country. I'm also, we are often focused on capacity building of youth, and we are starting from the fact that they need training, they need skills, they need knowledge. But I also want to reflect on the fact that young people also have a lot to offer. And we've employed on this project so many young people that our average age on the project is now around 30. We hired interns, and then we realized these guys are great. They know so much, and they are already finishing their formal education. They have some experience. They speak, foreign languages. They have the IT skills. They have so much to offer. So it goes both ways. It's not just about how we can train young people. It's also how we can use the knowledge that they already have. And once you start using that knowledge, you're giving them a chance and you're motivating them. So they are keen to further develop their skills, and they are the drivers of change eventually if you give them a chance.
Absolutely. Young people are the future of Bosnia and Herzegovina and future of tourism in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And I think what you're doing is wonderful. It's definitely going to empower the next generation of tourist operators and workers across the domain. It's such a broad field, and we're running slowly out of time. So I just want to finish on a couple of notes. I think one of them is cross-collaboration between different sectors. Tourism definitely does not operate in isolation. So can you give us an example of some of the sectoral collaboration, or what we're referring to as where do you see the opportunities between tourism and other industries such as IT, logistics, other areas of the economy?
Sure. Well, you already mentioned IT, and it's top of the list definitely, because a lot of the change that needs to happen in the tourism sector is going to be IT related. And this is where we are seeing the greatest interest from the youth, I would say, because they're also trying to think how they can use their IT skills for the benefit of tourism development. And we are most usually seeing these examples from someone who has been exposed to the tourism sector, for example, through their family activities or through just by living in, let's say, Mostar or Neum or some other tourism related places. They're basically starting to think how they can use their knowledge from the IT sector to help modernize or to help develop some new niches within the tourism sector. Transport is another industry that is heavily dependent on tourism. And this is also where we need to work in the future on prioritizing sustainability. So we're already seeing some options related to promoting eco-friendly transportation modes and developing green infrastructure, because if you think of a modern traveler, more and more people are driving electric cars, and Bosnia and Herzegovina may not be on their radar as a destination because they would maybe think that there are some limitations in terms of charging points around the country. But I was surprised to learn that there are over 200 free and mapped charging points for electric vehicles that are available to all international travelers. So we need to make sure that we are promoting this. We want to make sure that we are reducing the carbon footprint associated with travel. And, there are other examples where we can see how we can promote some new practices. I think the train ride from Sarajevo to Mostar was declared as one of the nicest in the world. And, we're just not using it as much as I think we should. And once people are on the train, you're basically getting 2 hours of commercial time where you can sell them the destination, where you can teach them about the destination through some videos and through some other mechanisms. Same with a taxi driver. When a person lands in Sarajevo or Tuzla or Banja Luka or Mostar, usually they take a taxi to get to their hotel. And this can be the first point of contact between these people who are visiting and the destination, in terms of just offering them more and giving them, incentives or giving them ideas so that they can stay longer at the destination and effectively spend more money at the destination.
Fedja, as we're running out of time, I'd just like to add something to what you've mentioned, because I guess these first touch points are so important. And I can say from first experience, I've brought over 200 Australian students from Melbourne to Bosnia. I don't think I've had a single person during this period of about 7 years that I've brought students across who has said that they had a bad experience in Bosnia. So we have a very, very positive outlook in terms of tourism. Some of the best experiences, some of the comments that we generally receive have been that people in Bosnia are super welcoming. very good hosts, from taxi drivers all the way through to restaurants, hotels, and just generally people on the street willing to engage. And the level of English that you've mentioned, spoken in Bosnia, is significantly higher than in some even more developed economies across the world. So I think there's a lot to offer, and there's a lot of good services already available to people. And I'd like to personally strongly encourage anyone who's listening to our podcast to continue being great ambassadors of tourism in Bosnia. I think we're all doing our job in whatever way that we can. Fedja, I just want to thank you again for being here with us on Futures Voices and for sharing some of these best practices and some of the results that even I was not aware of. So thank you very much for being here with us.
Thank you, Edin. Thank you, Mohammed. This was a great opportunity to talk about tourism development. And just for final words, I think going back to what you mentioned, let's make sure that we are the best ambassadors of this country, that we promote good examples and good practices, and that we are also part of the change where we want to see some improvements. Let's start with ourselves and our immediate network to make sure that that change happens.
Absolutely. And I think the easiest thing that we can all do is continue sharing beautiful photos of various parts of Bosnia. I guess local patriotism can play a big role in that. So if you come from a pretty little village that has a lot to offer, share it with the world, put the hashtags in there, make sure that everyone sees it, and let's get viral with some of those beautiful locations. So there you have it, everyone. Mohammed, I want to thank you as well for being on your first podcast here. It's definitely not going to be your last, but thank you very much for being with us as well.
Yeah, it was an honor. It was a privilege talking to Fedja and learning all about tourism. I think Bosnia can be a great place for digital nomads, especially.
Well, I think we have a very bright future. I'd like to thank you again, Fedja, and thank USAID for supporting Futures Leaders Summit and for partnering with us in promoting tourism as an avenue that can connect people, drive positive change throughout the country, but also bring an influx of foreigners who can enjoy all of the beautiful things that we've grown up with in our lives as well. So again, everyone, wishing you all the very best. Please tune into the next episode of Futures Voices. We will reveal who our next guest is very shortly. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you.